Welcome, Professor Floridi. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you for the invitation. So I'm a philosopher and I am a professor of philosophy and ethics of information at the University of Oxford. I'm also half Italian, half British by now. I have dual nationality because I saw Brexit coming.
But your role is indeed a fairly complex one. You have described some aspects of your nationality, but you are actually an authority. Big companies come to you for advice, academics from other fields consult you. How do you maintain that position?
The quick answer is with a lot of passion. When you like what you do, when you believe in what you do, you find time, you find the energy, everything becomes easier. And there's another secret, fantastic collaborators. I am blessed literally by a group of people around me with whom I collaborate. They collaborate with me, my students, my assistant, and my colleagues. So everything becomes easier in that respect. But actually, perhaps the intellectual point here is that there's so much that needs to be done, and some of the excitement is in the belief that we can do a lot in this information society that we're building. And therefore, when companies or academic colleagues or policymakers knock at my door, it's almost impossible to resist the temptation of engaging in the relevant projects.
So your door is open. So you really are not an ivory tower philosopher.
Not at all.
You have a huge following, you take a stance on political issues, you can make a mass audience feel passionate about ethics and not sleep over. How did you become a philosophical and ethical influencer?
I don't know if I'm an influencer, but that is a big role to have. But I think philosophy, good philosophy, is influential. And so if you manage to do a bit of good philosophy, then you also manage to have some influence. Now, of course, there are immense figures in my field, the Plato, the Aristotle, the Kant and Hegel of the world. But even in a small percentage, when you do a little bit of good philosophy, then it's a little bit like doing a good deed or cooking something good. People will appreciate it. People will follow. People will actually ask for more. So insofar as I can do something good, I'm glad that that little good has some impact.
So, but what influenced you? What made you the person you are today?
So many different things, but I suppose I believe in the ability to see things right and do the right thing. And that is as simple as that. Understanding what needs to be done and doing it in the right way. Now, it may seem a little bit naive and childish, but if you like, is the end of the process after you have studied and learned and discussed and wondered and doubted. You end up with that little certainty saying, if I get this right, and if I put some goodwill behind it, I can actually send things in the right direction. I can make a bit of a difference. And it could be at home, in the city, at the national level, at the UN, wherever you are. And that is a strength, knowing that a difference can be made for good.
But you are in Oxford. What's so special about Oxford? Is that maybe the reason why you have done what you have done? Could you have done that elsewhere?
I don't know. I think Oxford is at the same time an opportunity and a challenge. The opportunity is to have amazing people around you who can teach you, can show you, from your colleagues to your students, from someone in a different department and so on. So the community is extraordinary. The challenge is that Oxford is a very conservative place. It's very much an old university that has a huge legacy, and therefore the challenge is to be at the same time respectful towards tradition, but also innovative. And sometimes Oxford can be a little bit stifling, and therefore invite you to make a bigger effort to innovate It's almost like running with some backpack on your shoulders to train more heavily. When you drop the backpack, you run faster.
So you mentioned now conservative people. Would you like to share your thoughts on Brexit?
Oh, it's very simple. It's a disaster. It's a disaster both socially, economically, for Europe, but above all for the United Kingdom. But it's also a historical mistake. I've always seen it in the past few years as, and I was able to vote. I already had a British passport at the time, and of course I lost. But I've always seen it as an historical inability of the British culture and the British people to acknowledge the historical fact that the UK is a normal European country in a normal Europe. There is no British exceptionalism. The empire is gone. And today we are much, much stronger together as Europeans. Not grasping this in the 21st century is an historical mistake that will have dear consequences for this country. I do not envy the next generation of British citizens who will have to live with a silly decision of the current sort of governments when it will become terribly obvious that on all sides there was a mistake.
Yeah, I agree completely. But now let's go to the tech part of the interview. What do you enjoy most about working in the cyber or tech field?
I think that several things, but maybe the feeling of being a student, being constantly challenged because you don't know, that is something that not everybody can take. Trust me, it requires a lot of peace of mind and confidence to be able to say, I don't know, I want to learn. Can you tell me? Can you explain? Can you show me? And as a philosopher, I think that comes natural with the profession, being able to say, no, I know this much, but I don't know all that amount of stuff. And being exposed to a field where things are constantly changing, innovation is in the driving seat. Tomorrow, you do not know what new technology, what new policies, what new legislation will pop up. This is very exciting, but not for everybody. It's a bit of a strong taste that for some people is too strong. I love it.
You once said that even if they don't pay philosophers properly these days, at least they listen to them. This is way better than in the Middle Ages when philosophers were burned at the stake. How is the pay compared to other sciences now?
Yes, well, that was a joke. Some of my students complained, oh, there are no jobs for us in the world. I said, no, you must be joking. Have you seen our predecessors? Socrates was actually, forced to commit suicide. He was killed by the state. And until recently, Bertrand Russell was put in prison for his pacifist ideas. Or Bruno, another Italian philosopher, was burned at the stake. Spinoza died having not enough food basically on his plate. So it's not that we come from such a comfortable position. Today, the highest risk you have is that you won't find a job in academia. Well, things have improved substantially. Having said that, more seriously, I think philosophy has been its worst enemy quite often. Most of philosophy that we do is boring, irrelevant. Sometimes it looks like a joke. Having said that, the best of it is the essence of life. It's what we need to improve, change, understand ourselves, transform the world in a better place. And so I like to concentrate on those jobs and the value that we have in the tradition and say, look at what has happened to our predecessors, is when they push the agenda seriously, that they were put in prison, killed, and so on. Well, we can do something perhaps a little bit less dramatic, but we can be more serious in our engagement with the world. So in terms of jobs, I think we should run more risks. Okay.
In the last line of your book, The Fourth Revolution, you mentioned 4 books by philosophers that are very important to you: Wiener, Weizenbaum, Lyotard, and Simon. Can you sum up how they influenced you? This is important because if they are so important to you, so this must be something important there.
Yeah. I think each of them has taught me something fundamental and a methodological point that they all share, the ability to see things before they were happening. If you read Wiener, for example, about the human condition and cybernetics, what we would call today the digital predicament and so on, is extraordinary. I mean, the things that he was able to anticipate as risks, for example, in terms of AI, amazing. If you look at Lyotard, the post-human condition, especially the end of the book, we get the understanding of how the dynamics of information society. You may not like the vocabulary, and I sometimes struggle to understand exactly the precise meaning of some sentences, but the insightfulness is enormously rich. Herbert Simon, I mean, understanding the fundamental importance of design in sort of years when that was not in front of everybody. So I think that I could carry on with a list of maybe a few more extra books, but what they have taught me is the ability of clear thinking that looks at today and tomorrow, and it's able to not predict, because the future is open, but to outline what possibilities and what opportunities lie concrete and what could be done today in order to grab them. I wish I had that ability.
But you're in Italy, you have just published The Green and the Blue, where you illustrate your human project and issue a call for action. What do those colors stand for?
Yes, no, indeed. So that book was written in 2017. That's when I started. Then for other projects, other things, I was always there, add one chapter, refine, rewrite. And then finally, because of the pandemic, I had to lock myself in the house, and I managed to finish the book, which is a great thing. So I owe to the virus at least that book. And The Green and the Blue are, I think we need to be a bit careful here. So they stand for the green, all environment, all of them, not just the biological, urban environment, social environment, political environment, economic environments, is where we spend our lives. And therefore, the environment we're sharing now, the digital environment, the infosphere, environments. And the blue is representative of the digital technologies, the blue, the electric blue of the internet, then web, of the Internet of Things, of artificial intelligence, of big data, etc., social platforms, and so on. And so the fundamental idea of the book, and many other things there, but is that the green and the blue is the marriage of the century. The 21st century will be a good century if we will manage to put the green and the blue together. They haven't been always friends, but because the green and the blue have evolved, they are no longer what we were discussing in the 60s or 70s. Now they can be best friends. In fact, they could be spouses, as it were, to use the metaphor, one to save the other and the other to keep straight the other. So the green will keep the blue straight, and the blue could actually save the green. Now, combining these two doesn't simply mean, and that's what I would like to be very clear, oh, of course, no, this is so trivial, sustainability and digital technologies, that's what we all talk about, etc. No, that's not what I mean simply. I mean that the business of our society is to create and generate blue and green technologies, environments, not simply paint everything that we do anyway, a little bit green, a little bit blue. So let me give you an example, and I'll close here. It's not like a company being whatever it is, doing whatever it does, and say, oh, but I add a little bit of green in my, say, impact analysis, and a little bit of blue, I buy a couple of computers, and so on. No, what I'm talking about here is to make profitable in a real business the generation and production, for example, of green energy, of renewable sources. That is the green and the blue. So when I simplify, say, look to the politician I speak to, say, oh, of course, Professor, we need to put that little cherry on top of the cake. I say, no. It's the cake. The green and the blue is the substance, is where the added value, politically, socially, economically, in terms of business, of our society is going to lie on. If we don't get that, we will be just doing the same. We will be stuck in the 20th century, same industry, same politics, same society, same economics, same capitalism, with just a little bit of green and blue on the surface. Not what I mean. It's much more radical than that, but it can be done, and it can be done in a profitable way. Is what I want to see here is the enormous muscles of capitalism at the service of the green and the blue, not the other way around. And I think it can be done, but it can be done especially in Europe. That's why I am 100% European more than anything else.
So what are your views on the Green Deal, the European Green Deal?
I think the Green Deal, the new financial tools that are coming, the enormous investments post-coronavirus that we are expecting from Europe are going in the right direction. But we need to be clear where this is going to make a difference. And I said, again, it's not just a difference on top of what we're doing anyway. It's going to change the substance of it. So let me give you an example. So it's not just, for example, producing things, but producing experiences of things. Say, oh, what's the difference here? Let me trivialize as an Italian. So it's not about having a good pizza, because everybody can make a good pizza. It's about having a good pizza in the right environment, in the right place, in a way that is acceptable socially, etc., etc. That is the added value. So if we, as Europeans, are able to see the 21st century as our own century, insofar as that can be done, it will be because we will have grasped this entirely, deeply. So investment, where do you invest? In relations, and therefore in education, invest in people. We don't have to invest necessarily in buying more stuff, but we want to invest in people who then are able to produce more services, etc. So this shift, which really is a shift from a linear economy of consumption of things to a circular economy of experience of services and relations, well, this is something we haven't seen before, because there were no conditions before. I mean, we come from a century that has done a great job in terms of lifting a lot of people out of poverty. True, has done a massive, massive disasters never seen before. Absolutely true as well. Our century, the 21st, well, I think we should keep the best chapters of the 20th and therefore build on that in terms of this green and blue strategy. The last point, maybe if I may, is also a matter of understanding that politics is not about things, but it's about relations. We often speak about the republic as the res publica, the public thing. Well, I like to speak equally, if not more importantly today, of the ratio public, the public relationship that we have among ourselves and with the state and with the environment. If that is, for example, is something that we want to invest in, then Europe could be built as a Europe of values, not a Europe of borders. Meaning, for example, that we could talk to Canada, and Canada could join the European Union because it has the same values. And some countries that are in Europe geographically could actually go out of the European Union because they don't share our values. That is as radical as I mean the green and the blue. Deep are the foundations of what we're thinking.
Yeah, fascinating. Another factor, another color. All the indicators show that having women on company boards and diverse teams improves business performance, enhances ecological profile, reduces risk-taking, and creates many other important effects. You are invited to a lot of conferences and panels. What can be done to boost the number of women speakers?
I think that the point you're making is so fundamental and so obvious that sometimes we forget how difficult it is to solve it. To me, it's like someone saying, what you just said, oh, you know, we have discovered that if we run with two legs, we run better than only on one leg. It's like, wow, really? How could you possibly have guessed that? It doesn't take a genius. Like, obviously, no, clearly, patently so. How can anyone think otherwise? Okay, so that's my starting point of astonishment that we are still in need of stressing running on two legs is better than running on one leg. Having women and men in the same company with the same jobs paid the same amount of money or same chances of getting the same kind of positions, etc. It's a better company, it's a better society, it's a better schooling system, it's a better entertainment industry, etc. To me, it's like literally saying the earth is round, the earth is not flat. So true. How do we get there? I think that there are several things that need to change a little bit more than they've changed so far. Change has been too slow and frustrating, even in Europe. So we need to first change the culture around all this. There's a lot of inertia, not bad will, not sort of evil planning. A lot of the times, at least in my context, women are not included out of always done this way, let's not bother, I know Peter, John, and I don't know Mary and Laura kind of moment. Now that inertia has played an enormous role in this context. We need to start being a little bit more incisive. And people like me, for example, refuse to go to a conference where there is not a single woman in the panel, or the only woman on the panel is the one who is moderating the panel, or with a microphone around. Just saying, look, have you considered, no, Mary and Laura? Because I know John and Peter, and they're always there. So last time, for example, at a conference, I said, look, I'm happy to give my place. You don't need me. Here are 3 colleagues, perfectly capable, no, better than me, to give a great talk. How am I inviting them? So, no, it's okay. We hadn't thought about it. Well, think about it. So, 1, think about it. It's a must. Number 2, we need to start early, very early, as early as possible. I mean, the very idea that I still hear people saying, oh, you know, men are good at maths, women are good at cooking or something. Really? Because there is a biological brain out there, there is a female brain. The thing that you hear are atrocious. There is no such thing. We're all very different, and there are more differences between 2 men, if you like, than a man and a woman. So, of course, we're all different, but there isn't a divide between female and male, or at least if there is a divide there, then there's also a divide between that Italian and another Italian. Someone wearing glasses, someone not wearing glasses. Of course, we're all different. But I mean, this grouping is terrible. So, back to us, STEM. Science, technology, economics, mathematics, the sciences that obviously offer also often great jobs in terms of perspectives, more opportunities, higher salary and so on. Girls in STEMs, totally, completely. We need to remember, for example, that the history of computer science starts with women. Women who were often called computers, no, that's before Alan Turing, because they were doing all the computation. When it became a professionalized, money-making industry, the women disappeared, the men, came up. And anyone who says, oh, computer science is only for men, historically speaking, yes. Sociologically, absolutely. Biologically, you must be joking. Absolutely nonsensical. So, think twice, start early, and the last point, if I may, a bit of incentives. Because society will change, will overcome its inertia, think twice, and it will overcome its own mechanisms, for example, girls in STEM, so women attracted to those kind of professions. Also, in terms of a little bit of incentive. I'm not very keen on quota and stuff like that, because I think that distorts even more and sometimes reinforces prejudice. But some incentives saying, look, if you have a company, it's inconceivable that you do not pay exactly the same, for the same job, the same people, independently, whether they are men, female, women, girls, you name it. So that is crucial. And so there is legislation that could be passed where this could become transparent and companies could be punished for discrimination, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah, okay. So we stay in a company and we are talking now about compliance. Compliance is good, but to go a step further would be even better. A company that cares more about its customer, its employees, the planet, and of course, no a pay gap, is sustainable and has a commercial return too. What are your views on that?
I think that we have, for too long in the past, say, maybe 50 years or so, and the second half of the last century, we have concentrated too much on compliance only. So companies have been keen on making sure that they play according to the rules, and they stop there. Say, I'm compliant, I have plenty of lawyers, I've done my duty, here is all my sort of auditing, what else there is there to do. And not realizing that increasingly in a complex society in which we live, these companies play a social role. They need to be good citizens as well. So it's not enough to say, I have done nothing wrong. I want to know what you have done right? What have you done more and above over the pure compliance? So the simple analogy here that I provide to companies is the following. Compliance is playing according to the rules. Ethics is winning by playing according to the rules. It's a big difference, and the difference is exactly what we need to make today. So big companies like in Germany, in Italy, in France, which want to make a difference to the world, well, they need to go way above this simple, I've done my duty in terms of legislation. Customers, citizens, users should demand more and say, oh yes, and why should I like you as opposed to someone else who's done a little bit more to make the world a little bit better, went over and above what was sheer compliance. I think companies are learning this the hard way through competition. More competition will increase the ethical component and will therefore de-emphasize pure compliance, which of course has to be there. The law needs to be respected, obviously, but we would like to understand what extra can be provided by those companies. I just can't look forward enough to this because it's high time.
Yeah. In my ideal world, software and robots would do the essential chores while humans tackle the more important issues like peace, prosperity, and a clean environment. That calls for creativity, intuition, and social skills rather than brute force and naked violence. In other words, an all-male world can only benefit and survive by taking on some female characteristics. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Not entirely, because I think those characteristics are widespread. They are female and male. They are in men and women. I think that as human beings, we are both men and women. I have a bit of a Platonic view about this, maybe. And so I would say, yes, absolutely. No, machines, technology, at the service of humanity, 100%. And it cannot be conceived otherwise, although we have plenty of risk that that is not going to happen. But that is the line that we need to follow. When it comes to more women on board, I would say yes, because of course, you wouldn't even start knowing the difference, if you see what I mean. But I wouldn't qualify this in terms of, because they bring things that men, because otherwise we go back to men do this and women do that, pink and blue and so on. And I'm not completely sure. I mean, women can be the best Amazonian. They can go to war, and men can cook as well as anyone else. Men can take care of the kids, and the woman can be the CEO. A woman can be a real ruthless, tough general, and the man can be the most emotional, delicate individual, a poet and so on. So I would like to mix and match and make sure that we step forward and say we are all in ourselves, both men and women. We have the whole complexity of humanity in ourselves. And so each of us will be tempted to play more something or something else. But let's not put ourselves in boxes to begin with, because otherwise we go back to women do this and men do that. Women are good at this and men are good at that. And I find it difficult. Of course, the obvious fact that we have different bodies, that doesn't stand, of course, in Olympic Games and so on. But intellectually, in terms of what can be brought to a problem, I would like to see almost a sense of known man-woman kind of component to go beyond that distinction, not to eliminate it, almost Hegelian sense of maintaining it as a combination of the two, if you like. But maybe I'm too philosophical about this.
But how does your ideal world look like? Now I have to ask.
Say it again.
How does your ideal world look like?
My ideal world is one in which people, human beings, are not catalogued as women and men in terms of a prejudice. It's like saying, because you are a woman, because you are a man, or because you are anything else in between. Let's not forget LGBT plus, etc. Then this is the box in which I'm going to put you. My ideal world is one in which we ourselves decide and prefer that box or another, or that profession or another, to be a little bit more assertive or a little bit more collaborative, but not because I'm a man and therefore I shall be assertive. I'm a woman, therefore I shall be collaborative. Not at all, not necessarily. So a place where essentially we are much more open-ended text, more malleable, more open to possibilities, including, for example, our sexual preferences. And this is time to say this loudly. Our sexual preferences are our own. And it doesn't matter. I'm middle-aged, bourgeois, white man, and that's who I am. But it's also a choice. I could have been gay. I am not, as a choice, not because I couldn't.
Yeah. So now something different. Our 5G and Internet of Things going to impact cybersecurity. How can we cushion the risk?
I think if I can oversimplify, 5G is about speed, and Internet of Things is about space, so time and space, so to speak. 5G is in terms of how quickly we will be able to experience anything, downloading a page or watching a movie, but also acting at a distance or having a teleconference, which looks almost like you are there because the speed at which the reaction happens, the sort of connectivity is so fast that enables you to be telepresent. The Internet of Things instead is more in terms of your environment, being surrounded, interacting with gadgets, instruments, tools, products, that they are more responsive, that they are recording, they are able to sometimes anticipate needs and so on. So the smart to this and the smart to that, that is more about your space. And that is also something where we will enjoy, I suppose, a lot of novelties, but also experience many risks. Same with 5G. The risks of high speed, now imagine a car, is that you might actually crash even more badly. The risk of an environment full of gadgets is that privacy, autonomy, self-determination, well, they might actually be eroded pretty badly. So good and bad, but space and time, this is the difference.
Okay, but talking about risk, we have to mention Huawei and the presence in Europe. Is a competitor like this a security risk?
So I think that Europe has one competitive advantage, which is the sort of market, the kind of legal society, and this sort of rich population that it has, which can determine precisely the kind of technology that we are being sold. Now, we have a limit, which is we don't produce much of that technology, and that is terrible. I think we should invert that as soon as possible, but not by fiat, not by deciding that from state onwards, we spend gazillions of euros in a direction or another, because that is a recipe for disaster. We should make possible for companies to grow their own products here in Europe as opposed to elsewhere. That can be done, but by designing the right environment where good technology is developed, not by simply saying, oh, look, no, I want to have that industry here. Here's a massive amount of money as of tomorrow and spend it wisely. That will not work.
But Europe, as a first mover, is a real regulatory superpower, and it exports its values and standards. Europe is increasingly setting the norm, actually. What would you wish to see in a revised general data protection regulation?
I think the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and I was also part of the committee set up by the European Data Protection Supervisor to build the ethical framework to interpret the GDPR, has done a fantastic job. It's amazing if you look carefully at it, when it was designed, when it was approved, and how effective still is today. There is a good piece of legislation, if I know one. I mean, it's quite remarkable. What I would like to not so much change, but add to it, but I think is work in progress, is more on competition, more on taxation, and more on artificial intelligence. These are three big chapters where Europe can do more and better. It's already happening, so don't get me wrong. Things are moving this direction. So if we were to meet again, say in 2 or 3 years, I think this conversation will be different by pointing to some bits of legislation already in place. But remember, taxation, how these companies contribute to European welfare and well-being. Competition, can we really choose? Because today we cannot. There's only one Amazon, one Facebook, one Twitter, one Google, one Microsoft, one Apple, on and on and on. And how are we going to do the same with artificial intelligence? What we did for data protection, I hope one day, pretty soon, we will do it with smart technologies, machine learning, and so on.
But in a dictatorship or a theocracy, you can develop and implement innovative digital systems quickly. Is a price paid for that technological leap? So in China, you have your another Amazon or another Apple. But
yes, I mean, that is the superficial impression. When you have a crisis, an emergency, you need fast and specific decision to be taken immediately. And of course, a system that does that all the time, it's ready to go fast, take decision, top down, like a dictatorship. Absolutely. Two problems. One, that will be the same system that will be in place afterwards, and that is a problem. And second, that can also happen in a democracy. Good democracies have that ability to have decisive, impactful, quick decision processes if they want, when they want. So essentially, we are comparing here two tools. One, rigid, good only for one job, and when that job comes up, it's very good, but end of the story. For all the other jobs, terrible. The other one, flexible, adaptable, and when that job comes up, it can adapt quickly to do a good job, but is also good for all the other jobs. Which one would you prefer? I have no doubts. Democracy anytime.
So is democracy still the best of all possible systems?
As far as we know, yes, but it does evolve like all good systems. It's a bit like food. No, it's what we eat, something that we enjoy, say wine, for example. Is this good wine? Yes, it is, but it has evolved a lot since the Romans were drinking it. So we don't put honey in our wine anymore, and there's a refinement, etc. But it's still wine. No, it's still grapes, no squeeze, etc. So democracy is still democracy today. But it's very different from what we meant by democracy in Athens, 5th century. And I think it's ready for a new chapter. We need a democracy that is a bit more engaging, that picks up people at the very beginning. And here, if I may, I have a bit of an analogy, perhaps to explain what I have in mind. Democracy at the moment, when it's engaging, is supposed to be direct democracy. Not a bad idea, but not the best idea. It's like me inviting you to my house for dinner, and there's a set menu. Basically, I cook something. If you like it, great. If you don't like, it's gonna be embarrassing, but skip this and skip that, and maybe eat a little bit of something else. You still have a choice, but not much of a choice. Now imagine that I invite you to my house and I ask you, bring something. Everybody bring something. Well, that's different because, of course, at least you know that there will be a variety of food, and it's a direct participation. It's not just you're invited to my menu. Yes or no, Brexit, choose. No, I'm saying, can we cook something here together? Because we don't like what we have, but we can do better. And then the third case, which is my favorite case, can we cook together today? Can we actually put together our minds and say, look, this Europe, for example, of ours, is not working as well as it should. How can we do a better job, but together from the beginning? So you see, if I invite you to my house, I'm inviting you to choose about Brexit, yes or no. If I tell you, well, can we find a solution, maybe bring something, well, that's halfway. But if we start from the very beginning, that participation is epistemological, is in terms of ideas, contribution, design, points of view that we hadn't noticed. Things, for example, that someone say, oh, sorry, yes, we always done it that way, but it's a better idea. I hadn't thought about it. No, see our previous conversation. And therefore, at that point, if we make a mess, and often it happens when you cook together, we all happy anyway. We say, no, we did it together and we will do it again. If the sausages are burnt, well, we will have a sandwich and we do better next time. But if I give you just a couple of options, it's a yes, no referendum, only that, and it's a bad idea, well, Brexit happens, and that is a disaster.
Yes. Why does privacy matter?
Sorry?
Why does privacy matter?
Well, privacy matters because it's about ourselves. It's not about what we have. It's about who we are. So this is a confusion I find recurring. My data, as if my data were like my car, my shoes, my mobile phone. No, something I bought, I own, you can't use it, I can use it, I can sold it, I can sell it. That's not the case. Some of my data, not all of them, but some of my data are more like my hand, my lungs, my heart, my liver. It's me. They are constitutive of who I am. And therefore, I want to make sure that if I say share them with anyone, well, I better be in charge 100% because they are like my blood. I better give it to anyone I want, when I want, if I want. It's not like my car. So once you get that, it's not about a philosophy of economics and therefore a matter of ownership. It's about a philosophy of mind and identity, and therefore about privacy as protection of the individual and his self. It's a completely different story. And therefore, we need to be exactly like in Europe, very protective. And business is not good enough. I don't care if, oh, it would be such a better business if I could just sell your organs, and therefore it's a better business if I can sell your data. No, thank you. You don't sell my organs. Can you please not sell my data? No, those intimate data. Of course, let me finish with the analogy. I can sell my hair and I can lose my bits of my nails and it doesn't matter. So it's not absolute terms. What I had this morning for breakfast, who cares? But there are certain bits of information that belong to you, only to you, who make you who you are. Surely you want to be 100% in charge and make sure that nothing happens to that special informational you, because that goes with your identity, your mind, yourself. That seems to me essential. And I guess we are doing a much better job in Europe than anywhere else in the world.
Mm. But in your book, The Fourth Revolution, there is this statement: the questions you ask identify you better than the answers you give, for they can lie so much less. Do you want to comment this?
It is true, because of course questions are needs, wants. If I keep asking, for example, a lot of questions on bits for the house, where do I find this table from IKEA? How do I change bulbs in the kitchen? It's much easier to identify someone as a new house owner or someone who just rented a flat, etc. Whereas the bits of information about me, they can be maybe incorrect, maybe they're outdated. Suppose someone knows something about my former love for cats. And say, oh, Luciano, yes, he loves cats. But look at my search. I've been looking for food for dogs for the past 6 months. How do you take care of a dog? How do you build a little house for a dog, etc.? Which one is telling you a better story about me? My old sort of record as a cat lover, or my actual queries on Google about where to find the best food for my dog? Clearly my questions.
And why does technology need ethics?
Because it's an enormous power, and power without ethics is a risky business. It doesn't have to be a disaster, but it's likely to be a disaster. It's almost like unchaining a gigantic force, having no idea what to do with it, what to build with it, where to send it to make a difference. Surely we want to be careful, because technology without ethics is exactly the giant who doesn't know what to do, when to do it, for whom to do it, and it might easily generate disasters. So I like to see an ethical framework around ethics all the time to make sure that this force is a force for good.
Thank you for your fantastic insight. Do you have a message for our users now that we are concluding this conversation?
I will dare a little message, and I hope it's taken in the right way. Trust. Trust first, and then change your mind. Don't start any enterprise mistrusting everybody, not trusting the government, not trusting your neighbor, not trusting yourself. Trust yourself, trust your neighbor, trust the society in which you live, and then change your mind if that trust was misplaced, but trust first. That will at least provide a better life, not perhaps more success. I think it's more successful, but you definitely sleep better if you trust first and change your mind afterwards, rather than mistrust unless you change my mind. Trust first is a great way of approaching life.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your
Thank you.
work.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.